Federal Executive Council approves over 30 billion naira for food security and Ogoni cleanup.
This intervention will provide them with fertilizer, seedlings, chemicals, some of them are poultry.
Senate to investigate application of the electoral law by INEC in the 2019 general elections.
We must be able, as elected members and representatives of the people, to be able to tell the truth where it should be.
President, Court of Appeal reads Riot Act to justices handling election petitions.
Descend on any judge who is found wanting in the discharge of his or her duties.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss issues around the forthcoming supplementary elections.
Following the March 9th governorship elections held across Nigeria, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, announced that the polls in 6 states were inconclusive.
Now, the affected states were and still are Kano, Sokoto, Plateau, Benue, Bauchi, and Adamawa. And supplementary elections in the states, or the conclusion of collation as the case may be, have been scheduled for this Saturday, March the 23rd, 2019.
Now, you recall, Kingsley, that INEC declared elections in those states inconclusive, citing the margin of lead between two parties with the highest number of votes as less than the number of cancelled ballots.
That's right, Kirian, and there is also the case of Rivers, where the electoral process for the governorship election was initially suspended, but INEC says that it will resume collation in order to conclude the process.
But of course, already some of the supplementary elections are being threatened by litigation from political actors who would leave no stone unturned to swing the supplementary polls in their favor.
Well, such litigation obviously have also triggered concerns as to how many of the inconclusive elections will stand a chance of being concluded this Saturday.
So what are the real issues here playing out ahead of Saturday's supplementary polls? Will there be a walkover or a tightrope for INEC, given the series of litigation we've had? Now, will security deployments be heavy or light?
Well, Kirian, there will be answers, hopefully, to those questions and more, as we today focus on supplementary elections in this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kingsley Osadola, and I'd like to welcome you to the program, reaching you as always on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And we are broadcasting live from our Abuja headquarters studios in Nigeria's capital city.
And I am Kirian Umar. It's indeed good to have you join us this morning on the program. And as always, we will be bringing you complimentary segments, which will include the newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But let's begin the day with the morning news by Abdulmalik Adio. Hello, Abdulmalik.
Hello, good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. It's good to have you join us on the morning news. And the Federal Executive Council has approved over 27 billion naira intervention fund for agriculture in states affected by flooding, insecurity, and other devastating conflict. Also approved by the Council is 5 more remediation contracts valued at over 3 billion naira for Ogoni cleanup in the Niger Delta.
The National Food Security Council considered the importance of helping them restore activity, particularly agricultural activity. So the Council approved 8,558,529,755 naira, and the beneficiaries are estimated at about 69,872 people.
Now, elections are strong parameters for measuring a country's democratic development. This is why at the conclusion of any electoral cycle, a review of the process becomes imperative. The Senate at Wednesday's plenary urged that some challenges during the 2019 general elections need to be addressed immediately and therefore resolved to investigate application of the electoral law by the Independent National Electoral Commission.
To investigate all perceived inconsistent application of electoral laws by INEC in the 2019 elections.
We must be able, as elected members and representatives of the people, be able to tell the truth where it should be.
Those in favor of prayer 4, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Judicial officers, especially justices that are handling election petitions, are being charged to be upright in dispensing justice by upholding the rule of law. President Court of Appeal Justice Zainab Bokachua gave the charge at an induction course that is underway in Abuja for judicial officers who will be involved in the administration of justice on electoral matters.
Each and every one of you would be closely monitored by my office, and I will not hesitate to descend on any judge who is found wanting in the discharge of his or her duties. By the end of this induction training, you'll all be abreast with what is expected of you, and I'm sure by the time you resume your duty post, you'll be ready to carry out the task assiduously.
And the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in Adamawa State has confirmed the receipt of a court order restraining it from conducting the governorship supplementary election in the state, pending the determination of a principal suit on the exclusion of logo of a political party on the ballot paper of the 9th March governorship election in the state.
We will be waiting to hear the outcome of whatever decision the court will take tomorrow. INEC will certainly comply with the order.
And the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has adjourned the case seeking to stop INEC from collating the governorship election results in Bauchi State to Thursday, 21st March 2019. The presiding judge, Justice Iyang Ekwo, gave the order this Wednesday in Abuja. And the People's Democratic Party has enjoined its members and supporters nationwide not to despair but work assiduously towards the party's victory in the coming supplementary elections across 6 states of the country. National chairman of the party, Uche Secunda, stated this during the party's 85th Emergency National Executive Committee meeting in Abuja.
Not do anything that can cause a breach of the peace, but to remain firm and resolute.
Now, business-oriented agencies are set up to boost revenue generation for government. When 3 revenue-generating agencies appeared before the House Representatives Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs for Budget Defense, the committee members were dismayed that the expenditure of the agencies exceeds what they generate annually.
So what we do is we bring in people from different resource people from different areas to come to augment what we have.
We are a service-providing organization. The Act is also supported by other acts, not just ASPON Act itself.
Whatever we are spending or whatever we are receiving, these things are government money and is the money for the Nigerians.
And wife of the president, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, who is also the Global Tuberculosis Ambassador, has called on Nigerians to avail themselves for the diagnosis and treatment of tuberculosis in order to end the deadly diseases across the globe. Mrs. Buhari made the call during an outreach tuberculosis program in Kobe Village, Kuruduma district of the Abuja Municipal Area Council in preparatory of the 2019 World Tuberculosis Day.
One of the killer disease of our time. Therefore, I would like to take this opportunity to call on all individuals in Nigeria with the history of over 2 weeks of cough and fever to visit the healthcare center that does TB check. The TB screening and treatment is free.
As a mother, it encourages me to call all people to take care of your family, take care of the people around you.
And that's the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues shortly with Kingsley and Kirian after this break.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And now for us to have our business stories, here is our correspondent, Comfort Amodu.
Now, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, re-echoed federal government's commitment to strengthen relevant market institutions to reduce risk by building a healthy and competitive financial system that is better positioned to support the private sector, as well as sustain the development of the nation's economy. The minister stated this at the maiden edition night of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in Lagos. She maintained that capital markets play a critical role in the development of the economy through mobilization of long-term savings for investment, as well as efficient pricing of financial instruments. Let's now take a look at how the capital market fared on Wednesday, 20th of March, 2019. And Minister of State for Aviation Hadi Sirika says there is need to urgently address aviation infrastructural gap for the socio-economic growth of the country. He says this requires the implementation of international civil aviation organization standards and policies, plans and programs by all African states, as Africa currently accounts for 4% of global air transport services and has the highest potentials for growth in aviation development.
Significant upgrade and expansion to meet the requirement of the projected growth, but has to overcome the problem of insufficient access to financial resources for aviation development and modernization.
It's true that infrastructure development remains a key driver for progress across the African continent and a critical enabler for productivity and sustainable economic growth. It contributes significantly to the creation of employment and the downstream benefits, including human capital development, poverty reduction, and ultimately the attainment of the African Union Agenda 2063 on integration of the continent.
Many thanks for watching. I'm Comfort Amodu.
Thank you, Comfort, for that business package. Next for us here is newspaper review.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebe, is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kirian.
Okay. Good morning, Bayo. You're welcome.
Thank you.
We have about 5 newspapers
Six
here.
papers, actually.
6 papers
plus
here.
one having the editorial.
All right, and let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. The Daily Trust newspaper this morning, below the nameplate, we have a rowdy session in Senate over militarization of elections. We are on Daily Trust newspaper. If you can see that, the Daily Trust newspaper. All right, now the lead story in the Daily Trust newspaper is the North Central battle for Senate presidency. As a matter of fact, let's go to the next newspaper here. We will return to Daily Trust much later when we will be in the position to show the headlines to our viewers. So let's go to Leadership newspaper. Leadership newspaper for this morning. below the nameplate of leadership newspaper, AMCON seeks reintroduction of failed Banks Act. And now the lead story on leadership newspaper, election petitions tribunal, judges placed on watch list, is on page 4 with the two riders. A appeal court president warns against frivolous adjournment. Now courts to decide on Bauchi Adamawa governorship polls today. And our federal government approves 27.46 billion naira for states hit by insecurity and flooding. And just below the photograph on the leadership newspaper, we have Saraki, Lai Mohammed, others mourn Isupadeki. It's on page 12. Now, Senate suspends plenary for 2 weeks to work on the budget. That's on page 15. And then Nigeria rated 85th on Global Happiness Index. You get that story on page 16. Now, PMB declines assent to 5 bills. That has been gotten on page 5 of leadership newspaper.
Just before you return to the Daily Trust, let me take headlines from the Punch newspaper. Punch newspaper from, I just go from top to bottom because you have stories on the elections and then public health as well as other matters on the economy. Now, Punch newspaper from above the nameplate, experts laud federal government's plan to cut stakes in JVs with Shell and others. JVs, of course, stands for joint ventures. Rowdy session as Senate condemns militarization of 2019 polls. Measles outbreak kills 13 children in Borno. That's according to UNICEF. In flooding and insecurity, Federal Executive Council okays 27.4 billion naira for victims. That's on page 16. Now, 2 earpieces beside the nameplate. Atiku meets Southern and Middle Belt leaders, says justice will be done. And telcos, that's telecommunications companies, plan tariff review and call rates may rise. Now, the lead stories, of course, is on the rerun elections, and it says Abdulsalami panel meets parties, INEC and police tighten security. PDP petitions NJC, that's the Judicial Council, over judge's ruling on Bauchi results collation. Details can be found on page 2. Now, the photographs on the front page of the Punch newspaper have a caption, members of the Nigerian Union of Pensioners, federal branch in Lagos State, protesting over the non-payment of pension arrears by the federal government. And the protest took place yesterday in Lagos. At the foot of the front page of the Punch, court rejects request to stop announcement of Rivers election results, page 8. Policemen and drivers clash in Lagos, 1 killed, 10 buses vandalized, pages 4 and 5. Stay away from CBT centers, JAMB warns parents.
Okay, before Bayo comes in, sorry, let's go back to Daily Trust, and get stories on the Daily Trust newspaper. Below the nameplate, rowdy session in the Senate over militarization of elections. And then gunmen killed 10 in Benue community, is on page 4. Now, Bauchi governorship, INEC challenges court powers to stop coalition of results, is on page 13. And now the lead story, Northeast, North Central battle for Senate presidency. PDP plots to retain deputy Senate president. That's the lead story. And now below the photograph, just at the foot of the Daily Trust, how federal government generated 3.62 trillion naira from VAT in 4 years. And Atiku, governors absent at PDP NEC meeting. And now elections, Justice Bukachua warns tribunal members. And let's bring it by now.
Well, let's start with the judiciary. The Federal High Court, Abuja, yesterday declined to grant an ex parte application by African Action Congress, AAC, to stop the continuation of collation of governorship results for Rivers State. The Justice Inyang Eko held that the ex parte application cannot be granted without hearing the other side, that is the other party. Accordingly, the court ordered that the process be served on the other side for them to come to court to show cause why prayer sought by the AAC should not be granted. A faction of the All Progressive Congress in Rivers State had actually adopted the AAC as its candidate because it could not contest in that election. Still at the courts, for Bauchi State, INEC has filed its objection to the order of the Federal High Court Abuja halting the coalition announcement of governorship election results in that state. In an affidavit deposed by a legal officer of INEC, INEC deposed that the commission says the court lacks jurisdiction to dabble into post-election matters, such as the outcome of the Bauchi governorship election. INEC is contending that an election petition tribunal had exclusive jurisdiction to review the decision of INEC on electoral matters. Hearing continues today. Also in Adamawa, INEC and Adamawa is not sure of holding supplementary election March 23rd, that is on Saturday. The resident electoral commissioner, Barrister Kashim Gaidam, says, though all preparations are concluded, the commission will have to wait the outcome of the court ruling today. It may be recalled that Adamawa State High Court, Yola, on 14th March, suspended the election process for an alleged exclusion of the logo of the Movement for Restoration and Defense of Democracy, MRDD, in the election. The hearing at the Adamawa High Court is to be held today. You recall, Kingsley, there was your reaction the other day that there's conflicting dispositions as regards the electoral jurisprudence in these instances. And I think part of that is what the President of the Court of Appeal warned judges yesterday, to stay within the precincts of the judicial guidelines and not go overboard. But the one thing about our judicial system is that when such challenges come up, they go a long way to develop our jurisprudence or legal system, as the case may be.
Well, Bayo, to an extent, yes. Then to another extent, not exactly. Ask me why. Okay, and the reason is simple. Where jurisdiction is cardinal, to the proceedings of any court or any tribunal. If you do not have the competence, the legal competence to hear and try a matter, you obviously you'll run into troubled waters. But there are two issues here when courts can assume jurisdiction. There are pre-election matters, and then there are also matters arising from the conduct of an election. It is clear which of the courts or tribunal has jurisdiction on matters arising from the conduct of an election. You have a plethora of decided cases on such matters. So that is where the confusion is coming from. You find courts, in my opinion, that do not, on the face of it, have the competence to handle some of the matters, giving pronouncements. And more worrisome is that some of these injunctions are being given ex parte, that is without hearing from the other party. Now, the question, Kirian, we are discussing this later in the program. You are issuing these orders now, and there is also a time delimited for the determination of these cases. If you recall, part of the constitutional amendment that we have had up to the fourth iteration, it had to do with the fact that it had to delimit the time so that cases are concluded before the 29th of May. So you are issuing these orders and so on and so forth. Perhaps at some point they will come back, to get all of that done. Now, the issue of the President of the Court of Appeal, her Lordship, had to do with the address she gave to members of the Election Petitions Tribunal. These are tribunal judges who will preside over petitions arising from the conduct of elections. But, there's the potential of sometimes, misinterpreting the advisory by the President of the Court of Appeal, warning the judges they are under watch and so on and so forth. What could that mean? Under watch, of course, stay within the bounds of the law. But also dispense justice fearlessly. So that the fact that you are under watch doesn't then mean that, you must canalize your decision, to fit certain... Are you with me? So,
you see, from the point of view of a layman, one really wonders why these, should I call it misunderstandings or misconceptions? When you're talking about what the law says, one wouldn't have thought that there should be arguments on who has jurisdiction over an election matters, because the entire thing has been clearly stated. So why the the argument of who has jurisdiction over an issue or jurisprudence or what have you? So for me, the tribunals have been constituted, and they have a job in their hands. That's as simple as that. So whatever explanations coming from the other perspectives concerning the law and how it will be practiced, worries some of us who don't understand, the law. And when something is clearly stated in the Constitution, there would have been no reason, for anybody to, raise any eyebrow about what has been said, and should be followed, administratively.
Kyrian, you are right about, Bayo, just let me, Kyrian, you are right. Now, part of the complaints that you hear from the highest court in the land, that is to say the Supreme Court, is that matters that are otherwise settled still find their way on appeal to the Supreme Court, which is why the Supreme Court's desk is clogged. Matters that ordinarily are settled, some of them interlocutory.
Apparently, abuse of court process. But sometimes some of the arguments, just like every issue, have two sides of the coin. In fact, a similar case was raised in the case of the Code of Conduct Tribunal about issues about jurisdiction. And while some were arguing that the Code of Conduct Tribunal has exclusive jurisdiction on matters relating to the Code of Conduct that excludes other courts. So, again, this is what I mean that...
But in the case of again, people also are arguing that the CCT, does not have, the competence, to take the action that he took.
Good. So this is why I say that by the time we go through the processes, at the end of the day, a decision will evolve and our legal system will be the better for it, because positions will have, precedents will have evolved, and we will learn. We will then learn from this.
Because this will reoccur again. It has been happening over time. That's just the issue.
The other story that I think I should need to draw concern is a story that broke at Osogbo. It is an area that is called Hallelujah. Some Muslim worshippers in Osogbo narrowly escaped being attacked by gunmen in the estate. Some gunmen trailed them as they were heading towards the mosque for the dawn prayers. They raised alarm, and the Deputy Commissioner of Police in the state, Abu Mustafa, mobilized, and upon hearing that distant call, they were able then to arrest one of the gunmen and also retrieve a gun from him. The police public relations officer of Osogbo State, that is Folashade Odoro, says that, yes, the suspect has been arrested and he's being interrogated. Meanwhile, the Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, headed by the Sultan, had actually issued a statement following the attack in Church Hill, Australia, where 50 worshippers were killed and 40 others were injured. The statement, which was issued by Professor Salihu Shehu, had then said that sadly, there are some who, out of hatred and bigotry, welcome the mass murder. Incidentally, he then was citing the situation with a senator in Australia who was blaming the worshippers for the attack. Incidentally, here in Nigeria, on the social media, some persons, wittingly or unwittingly, have been foolishly calling for the same thing to come to Nigeria. In fact, one person on the social media, he was very specific. He said, let them come to National Mosque in Nigeria. Now, this kind of people tend to hide their criminality on the social media, and this kind of inviting persons to violence on the social media can have serious consequences. And I think the security agencies should be up and doing in fishing such persons out before they lure some young men who don't understand the implication of what is happening into committing serious crime.
Okay, now...
I think you can proceed.
Yes, I have the New Telegraph newspaper. Below the nameplate, these are stories that we read in other newspapers. George, a son in Charlton March during Farishe's trial. George and son in Charlton March during Farishe's trial, on page 10. And then tribunals, well, you are under close watch. PCA tells justices. Now, uproar as Senate debates militarization of 2019 general elections. And then FEC okays 27.46 billion naira intervention fund for insecurity and flood victims. This is on page 5. Now, the lead story on the New Telegraph this morning, APC, Atiku suffering from depression over defeat with two riders. Well, he says ex-VP's 1.6 million votes victory claim ludicrous. And now, on Atiku, I will recover my stolen mandate from Buhari. Then Southern Middle Belt leaders back PDP candidates. That's on page 3. And the photograph on the New Telegraph, has the U.S. Navy brass band performing during a special live performance at the University of Lagos. Do they really have time to go playing?
Oh, sure. The Nigerian Army has a band.
But,
of course, the police has,
has a band.
Has a more famous
But all the services
band.
now have very elaborate and good bands.
Yes. That's right. That's right. You need to have some good music in order to still on normal.
In fact, most of the ceremonial music that you now play during ceremonies in Nigeria were composed by officers of the Nigerian Army. They detoured from the former British colonial musicals to those that are indigenous and Nigerian.
Exactly. And Nigerian Police Band is one of the best bands we have in this country. Okay, now below that we have battling courts over inconclusive polls with two riders. INEC to judge, you lack power to stop collision of results. It's on page 4. PDP drags justice to NJC. Court declines to stop reverse results.
All right, Kirian, I also have the Daily Sun, but incidentally, most of the stories on the front page are stories that you have also read. Let me just take, therefore, the lead story, which comes with a kicker. Presidential election. Atiku APC exchange fire with 3 riders. Court will restore by stolen mandate, says PDP candidate. You are suffering depression over defeat. APC hits back. Ruling party's victory will be short-lived. That's according to Saraki. Details, of course, you find inside on pages 6 and 7. Now, also there on the first column from the right-hand side, Rivers PDP elders alleged plots to shift result collation to April 2nd. Bayo.
Well, the arguments now have left the polling booths. Is now coming onto the pages of the newspaper. And yesterday, former President Olusegun Obasanjo says he has declined to comment on the presidential election of February 23rd because it is a case that is now before tribunal. In his opinion, while he was at the book launch elections in Nigeria, he said commenting on it will be sub judice. In another development, Dr. Bukola Saraki has appealed to his supporters that this victory that the other party has seen is going to be short-lived. He was speaking at the PDP National Executive Committee meeting Wednesday. That's what part of what Kingsley read there. And the All Progressive Congress is also kicking back, saying that, well, this is an election that is won, signed, sealed, and delivered. And the dream that it will be overturned is what they describe as hallucination. So it's now become a verbal war pending the time that the decisions of the tribunal will eventually be arrived at.
Yeah, for the presidential election, the Tribunal of First Instance is, of course, the Court of Appeal. That's and then from there, the
Supreme Court.
Assuming there's an appeal arising, then it goes to the Supreme Court.
Well, actually, it's going to be appeal. I mean, we've gone through that over time.
Well, we didn't see that in 2015.
Yeah, well,
yes.
because somebody accepted defeat.
Oh, yeah, sure. So then, of course, from 1999 until 2015, you had litigation arising from the presidential elections, All right, Kirian, if you don't have any other story, let's take to this editorial coming from the Nigerian Pilot. Curtailing the cost of our elections. Bayo.
Yes, this is editorial that is based on a pronouncement by a senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, who says that about 250 billion has been spent from the government's purse for the purposes of election. This is aside from what has been approved for INEC to conduct election. And it is saying that the monetization of the electoral process is quite astounding and is undermining our democracy. Particularly, you recall that there were ceilings for campaign expenditure, and this is elaborately provided for in Section 91(4) of the Electoral Act. Senators had a ceiling of, I think it was, senators have a ceiling of 40 million, House of Rep 20 million, presidential 1 billion, governorship 200 million. This, they argue, is excluding those who do not have the resources to compete in the electoral process. Secondly, the sale of expression of interest were also quite expensive, and that also went a long way in excluding persons. And therefore, when you put a high cost of expense for people to contest and come into office, it becomes an investment that naturally, when people come into office, they need to make returns. And these are elements that heightens corruption in our governance system. And so something has to be done about this high cost of the electoral process and the processes of getting elected to come to serve your nation. In other climes, it's after people have served elsewhere, acquired their wealth, and they come and offer themselves for service. At the end of the day, they end up becoming poorer than when they came into office. The reverse is the case.
We've discussed that several times, on this platform, where we were able to get guests, who really spoke on the issue of making politics business or a venture, where you put in money. Perhaps if you're a godfather, you sponsor a candidate who now intends to bring returns when he gets to power. So it's a business venture that has been established, and some people even claim that there are professional politicians. So that's what we have.
Yeah, Kieran, you're right, and Bayo, you're right. But it's like if you look at a double-sided ledger, the aspect you just talked about now will relate to the candidates and their parties, the contributions and their campaign expenditures. But there's also the other side, which is the expenditure by the electoral umpire. To what extent can we continue, to have very costly elections the way they are? And ultimately, you ask yourself, what is the outcome? Are we having value for money?
And after the elections, we still have, we still record some logistical issues. We still record some,
If last year, when the budget was being considered, you recall there was a headline in some of the papers for a few days pertaining to how much had been voted for the canine department. That is to say, dogs. The dogs. If you, on the social media, I'm sure you have seen some comments here and there. So look, where were the dogs? When these riots and so on and so forth were taking place. I'm sure, of course, they had a way of deploying those things. But there are some aspects that you can actually use to cut the cost of conducting our elections. Bayo, I'd like to thank you for being
Thank you too.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, God willing.
Okay, all right. It's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be focusing on the supplementary elections taking place this weekend.
Now, you are still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now, to set the tone for our conversation this morning on the inconclusive elections, let's take this background report put together by our correspondent, Abdulmalik Adiu.
On March 9, 2019, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, conducted governorship elections in 29 states. At the end of the exercise, elections in 6 of the states were declared inconclusive, while that of Rivers State was suspended at the point of collation of results.
That we need to protect our staff, including ad hoc staff, staff of the commission, collation officers, and so on and so forth, and also protect the credibility of the collation process and the result process. We decided to suspend everything relating to the governorship elections in Rivers State, and also all the state assembly elections where results have not been announced.
The basics for INEC's declaration of elections in the affected state as inconclusive was that the number of cancelled votes exceeded the margin of win between the 2 leading candidates in each of the states. The affected states are Adamawa, Bauchi, Benue, Kano, Plateau, and Sokoto State. The concept of inconclusive election has reoccurred at various times in Nigeria's electoral process. The additional burden imposed on INEC to conclude the inconclusive election is traceable to the regulations and guidelines for the conduct of supplementary election. According to the margin of lead principle contained in Section 26 and 53 of the Electoral Act and paragraph 41E and 43B of INEC's regulations and guidelines, the Commission cannot declare a winner if the number of cancelled votes can mathematically affect the outcome of the election. Will the supplementary elections be a do-or-die contest? Will there be heavy or light security deployment? And what are the chances that they will be concluded? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria shall be taking a critical look at the supplementary elections slated for Saturday, the 23rd of March, 2019.
Thank you very much, Abdul Malik Adio, for that background report. And joining us in the studios now to discuss matters arising from the inconclusive and therefore supplementary elections scheduled for this Saturday, we'd like to welcome Chinwe Ogbuka, who is the Assistant Director of Publicity of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Ms. Ogbuka, a pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is Mukhtar Halilu Modibo. He's an election observer and head of the data collection for the 2019 elections observers mission. Mukhtar, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
And a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, a regular analyst, Jide Ojo, as an election observer, and of course a public affairs analyst. Jide, delighted to have you with us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, Kieran.
And from Just Studio, it will be, of course, from the Sokoto studio will be Mohammed Mustafa, Assistant Inspector General of Police, who will be joining us much later in the course of the program. But presently, we have our correspondent in Jos, Caleb Gochin. He will be, of course, giving us an update on the preparations for the supplementary election that will also hold in Plateau State. And we've just gathered that via Skype from Kano, correspondent Abdullahi Mustafa will also be part of this program this morning. Mustafa, good morning and welcome, if you can hear me clearly. All right, I think we should begin with Caleb in Jos.
In Jos, absolutely, because Jos is one of the states where the supplementary elections have been slated for this weekend. Caleb, of course, you've been part of the pre-election, election, and now the supplementary elections in Plateau, especially also with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, give us a sense of why we are having the supplementary elections in Plateau and which slice of the state is going to be involved on Saturday.
Okay, thank you very much. The elections were conducted in Plateau State, but it is, as it is nationwide, the margin for between the two candidates were such that none could be declared as outright winner. So we have a case whereby the cancelled votes were more than the margin between the two, and that necessitated the supplementary elections that we have coming up this Saturday. And on the level of preparedness, the INEC spokesperson here on the Plateau has been on some of our programs within the week to tell the public on their level of preparedness. And I tell you, he has assured everyone that they are ready, and 10 local governments are involved in this. So from the 10 local government areas, we have 20 polling units that the supplementary election is going to take place. So not all the local governments are involved in this.
Caleb, Caleb, there's something else I would like you to clarify. You said 10 local governments are involved on about 20 polling units. Now, the supplementary elections you are having on Saturday in Plateau, do they concern only the governorship election or also state houses of assembly elections? And by the way, how many local governments in total are there in Plateau?
We have 17 local government areas in Plateau State, and just like I said, 10 local government areas are involved in this. So the House of Assembly elections were concluded with the PDP clinching 8 seats and the APC with 15. So that makes about 23. But just like we told you last time, unfortunately we lost one of the members who was to represent Pengana constituency. He was a member, an old member of the House, so he was re-elected. But then, unfortunately, we lost him after the elections.
All right, Caleb, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to speed. But what else do you know about preparations, not just on the part of INEC, but on the part of the parties concerned and, of course, the electorate? You can also talk to us in terms of security that has been put in place to ensure that the reasons for which cancellations were so much that the elections became inconclusive do not reoccur again this time around.
Okay, just like I said, we've not been able to have the Commissioner of Police here, but then he briefed the press yesterday where he mentioned some of the successes he's had over the weeks, and one of them was the successful outing during the gubernatorial elections in the state, and that they are prepared, his men are ready to ensure that the supplementary elections come and go freely. So from that, I can tell you he has confirmed to us that, yes, the police are ready. So from that end, there's no problem at all. They've given the people their assurances. And sorry, if I can get the second question now.
Now, you can talk to us about the preparedness of the electorate to come out en masse in those local government areas to vote, because there could be voter apathy with respect to what, of course, has been now an elongated electioneering. What is the state of the electorate, if you have been getting information about how people are getting ready for this election? And again, another is the aspect of security, which you have really talked about, but we may require more explanations in terms of what the security apparatus is going to be doing on that day in Plateau State.
As usual, as we know, they are going to, the personnel are going to be deployed to those areas, those areas that are going to be involved in this election. Normally, when it comes to security matters, they don't give you details of what they intend to do. But that he announced, he said they are ready and the personnel are there. So they are going to be there. They are proactive about everything. So that we took it for their words. So the details of that was not disclosed, actually. So what the kind of personnel, the machinery and whatever, those were not made public to us. But the level of preparedness, as you know, very few polling units are going to be involved in this, and not much is seen, just as the main elections that took place. But then, interaction with the electorate tells you that some have already given up to fate, that even without the elections, somehow the winner has already been known. But then, there are those that felt their votes were not counted. So this time around, they will ensure that they come out and ensure that the INEC counts their votes. So there are two sides to it. There are those who feel, no, there's even no need to come out for it. And then there are those that, yes, want to see that their votes count. So in some aspect, the people have also shown some level of preparedness and readiness to participate in this election. And for the parties, I've not seen any electioneering campaign going on much, and the parties have not really come out to make any definite position on what is expected of them on that day. But going by what we have had so far, they are ready to go out there to claim what belongs to them.
Right. Caleb, do the voters in the 10 local government areas understand that indeed this is not voting all over again for all those who were either participated or couldn't participate in the March 9th elections, but that the supplementary elections will be specific to the affected polling units?
I guess they know because we had some guests on one of our programs. We invited a leader of the women. We had somebody from the civil society, and we also had the INEC spokesperson here. Going by what they said, they are doing their best to ensure that they enlighten the people out there. They know, and the parties, we were told, are supposed to take this enlightenment campaign to the people to ensure that they come out to do what is required of them. These days, people are enlightened enough, so I'm sure with all that has happened, they know that, yes, it's not going to be for all the offices, but only for the governorship. And those that are not supposed to be participating in the elections, they also know. And there's not been any pronouncement on movement and all that, but I know that maybe, possibly, there may be restriction of movement in those particular local governments that the elections may take place, but we've not got any position on that officially. So I think the people are aware of what is expected of them.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, Caleb Gochin, speaking to us all the way from Jos. With respect to the preparations for the supplementary election in Plateau, said thank you, and of course, have a great day. Well, we have just been informed that we now have joining us from Kano, that's via Skype, correspondent Abdullahi Mustafa, who will be coming to you in the course of the program. But for now, let's return to Abuja, or maybe stay with him.
That's right. I think that's before we lose the Skype connection.
No,
yes.
Okay. I hope you can hear me clearly, Mustafa. Now, the question is, just give us an idea or a sense of preparations in Kano with respect to the supplementary election. We all know that Kano election was keenly contested between the two lead parties. What is on ground now in terms of preparations, security-wise, and of course on the part of political parties that will be engaging themselves on Saturday?
Yesterday, there was a meeting between the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and security agencies under the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, being chaired by the State Commissioner of Police, Muhammad Wakili. And after the meeting, I contacted the two sides. The INEC confirmed to me that yesterday, Wednesday, the state office has taken delivery of all sensitive materials and will commence distribution or will distribute to the local government affected today. Also, the security agencies have also assured that more security measures have been taken and more security operatives will be deployed to polling units because during the previous exercise, there were some shortcomings that even led to the cancellation of results from some centers due to overvoting and violence, and that has to do with inadequate security in such places. So the two agencies or the two parties in the conduct of the elections have assured of smooth conduct. And from the political parties, since the announcement of a new date for the supplementary, for the supplementary elections, the two parties have engaged fully in mobilization of supporters or the public to support them during the supplementary elections. They've been going to the local government areas, especially the two major areas affected, there is one ward in Nasarawa local government area, which is the biggest in terms of population in Kano State. That area has nearly 500,000 registered voters, and elections were cancelled in Gama ward, which has 42,000 registered voters. So since the beginning, or since last weekend, all the two parties have been going there through the media, appealing to the people of that community to support them. Also in Dala local government area, Nasarawa has 44 voting units affected, and Dala has 28. All in all, there are 285 voting points that were cancelled, and the supplementary elections will be held this Saturday. So they are more concerned about these two major areas, Nasarawa and Dala. So they've been going there every day. They've also been using the social media platforms to convince voters that they are the right party to be voted for.
Yeah, thank you very much. In all, how many local government areas are affected by the supplementary elections? That's one. And if you have a sense of a round figure of the margin of lead, between the two top candidates out of the March 9th elections, what number of votes are they scrambling for at this point in time?
Previously, it was said 30 local governments were affected, but as of yesterday, the Assistant Director of Public Affairs, Garbalon, confirmed to me that it is going to be held in 29 local government areas and in 78 wards and 285 polling voting points. So this is where the elections are to be held. And as I said earlier, the two parties are indeed battling for survival. The total votes cancelled during the collation were 141,000. And at that time, the PDP candidate was leading by 26,000. He has 1,040,000, while the APC candidate has 987,000. So if going by this figure, that it is only the 141,000 registered voters that will turn up during the supplementary elections, it means the APC needs more than 80,000 votes, while the PDP needs 60,000 or so. But there are hopes that more registered voters will turn up this coming Saturday to take part in the elections. And that is why the parties are pushing hard to ensure that they convince the registered electorate to turn out so that they can win with a wide margin, because it could the narrative may change due to the voter apathy during the previous elections. So if, like Nasarawa local government, the Gama ward will have more than 30,000, and Dala, which is next to it in terms of population and number of registered voters also. One thing I need to tell you is that the affected areas in Dala local government area are also densely populated, especially the Gobrawa, Gomaja, and Yellow wards. So I think this may change, because we may have more than 300,000 voters turning up for the election this time around. So that is why the two parties are taking it seriously. They've been going day and night to these areas. Though there are other local government areas like Dogwa, which has 12 polling units cancelled. That also is being taken seriously. And many of the remaining local government areas are outside the metropolitan area, which is less populated and relatively also has a fewer number of registered voters. So they are not also neglected, but the concentration on mobilization is in these two local government areas, or where the where the elections are to be taken again are allocated.
Very briefly, were the House of Assembly elections concluded on the 9th of March? That's one. Two, there were reports of persons purchasing or selling PVCs for as low as 500 naira. Do you still have reports of such incidents in and around Kano?
I can say the local government or State House of Assembly elections were not affected. All the 40 seats were occupied, were won by the two parties. And the issue of buying PVCs was true. The police command has confirmed the arrest of 5 persons and recovered 8 PVCs. And that, I think, has deterred those interested or those engaged in the act from continuing with this act. Since the end of last week, no report of such issue of PVC buying has been reported to the police or reported on the media.
Just in a word or two, we're actually running out of time, but in a word or two, you didn't tell us about security, because Kano was one of the anticipated flashpoints during the governorship and the House of Assembly election. What is security situation like? Is there any mechanism, perhaps giving out by the security agency concerned for this election, that's the police? Is there any form of arrangement being made to ensure that the areas affected by this election will be properly policed during the election, in a word or two?
The issue is the densely populated areas need more security, and the police are assured of deployment of adequate personnel to such areas, and elders are also coming out to speak to people to conduct themselves during the exercise. But the situation now in Kano, everybody is going about his normal business, and it seems the supplementary elections will be held peacefully in Kano State.
All right, thank you very much indeed. And that's our correspondent in Kano, Abdullahi Mustafa. Thank you very much for giving us that update. All right, Kingsley, we have another guest joining us from Sokoto. Of course, we have earlier announced him, and that is Assistant Inspector General of Police, Zone 10, covering Sokoto, Kebbi, and Zamfara. And he is AIG Mohammed Mustafa.
All right, AIG Mohammed Mustafa, well, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. Give us a sense of what the security preparations are ahead of the supplementary elections in 2 days' time in Sokoto.
For having me this morning. Good morning, all. Sokoto is ready security-wise, and INEC is also prepared. We have 136 units points for the supplementary elections, and we have reviewed the lessons learned and the security analysis of the previous elections, and we are fully prepared for the elections.
Let me ask you this, sir. There were pockets of violence during the governorship election in some parts of Sokoto State, and even after the election. And it is pertinent that we find out from you this morning what the preparations are with respect to ensuring that the areas affected in this supplementary election will not experience what we experienced in certain parts of Sokoto State during the last election.
Analyze the security situation in the last elections and reviewing the whole thing, lessons learned. We are well prepared for those points that we experienced the violence and the conflicts. So by and large, 22 out of the 23 local governments are going to experience this. And here in the town is about 11 units. Largely it's at the KBA and those borders and all these things. So we are quite conscious of this. We have planned well, and we are ready to take care of the situation. It's good. We shall, by God's grace, have a hitch-free and very successful elections.
During the general elections, you had this traditional lockdown, no movement unless, of course, you are involved in election duties, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. What will be the rule on Saturday?
Considering 22 out of 23 local governments are involved in the exercise, it is expedient that we should have that observation of restrictions, which will be an added security measures. I think by and large, the number of votes that are expected is about 75,000, and the areas are largely outside. The city is just experiencing the exercise in about 11, 12 units. Then largely as the border and all this. So we're going to, the deployment has been adequately done, and it's going to be, by God's grace, a hitch-free exercise.
Okay, thank you. We may return to you in the course of the program. And now, back to our Abuja studio, where we still have 3 guests here with us. Jide Ojo is here, Chim Obuka is here, and of course, our friend of the Observer Mission, Modibo. All right, now let's begin with INEC. Chim Obuka is the Assistant Director of Publicity, INEC. Now you have elections to conduct in 6 states of the Federation. Of course, you've had the conversations we had with our correspondents in Kano and in Jos. Tell us about preparations. Of course, we know that Kingsley, historically speaking, INEC will always tell you that they are prepared.
Good to go.
Good to go. So, how good to go are you this time around?
Thank you very much, Kirian. Just like you rightly said, yes, it's not a rhetorical answer that we are good to go. I think we are good to go. Because since after the date for the election was fixed, we started preparation to ensure that what happened earlier will not repeat itself. At least we have learned lessons from the challenges we had, logistically, and the other challenges we had, they have been addressed. Let me also inform us that this morning by 11 a.m., the Commission is going to address the press to give us updates on the preparations for the Saturday supplementary elections.
What would be the rules governing, for instance, voting time in the areas where voting will take place?
I think it is the normal rules for voting. Like the Commissioner of Police just said, the restriction of movement is going to be from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the areas where elections are going to take place. It's also going to apply to all the states where we're having elections.
Voting time, will it usually have it from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., or, I mean, once you think the process is concluded and you pass?
Exactly.
No, give our viewers the information. What will be the voting time in the polling units where supplementary elections will take place on Saturday?
Oh, the voting time is usually from 8 to when the last person on the queue has voted. We usually say 8 to 2 p.m. But once you're on the queue before 2 p.m., you'll be allowed to vote.
Okay, so the same rule applies, right? That's what we understand. Okay, now let's turn to Jide Ojo. Jide, look, inconclusive elections appear to have become a recurring decimal in recent elections, organized since 2015. We had that in Osun State. We have 6 states now that are involved, with respect to inconclusive nature of an election. Now we are going to have a supplementary election. How would you sum that up, with respect to what should be obtainable in electioneering of this nature? What is your judgment of the outcome of certain elections, or what are the elections in 6 states concerned now about this supplementary fix for Saturday?
Thank you, Kiran. For me, and this I've documented in my column in The Punch, inconclusiveness of an election shows that the election is becoming very competitive. I didn't see, or I'm yet to see inconclusive election in a negative sense. In time past where you don't have inconclusive election, ask the operators of the system. They will tell you results are just written, and after the election, you start on printing to match the result you have declared. But now, because of the competitive nature of the elections, you are having a knife-edge victory. No more moonslide, no more landslide victory on behalf of anyone. That's one. Two, inconclusiveness is born out of not wanting to reward bad behavior by the electoral management body. How do I mean? You see, the INEC doesn't take a delight in announcing that an election is inconclusive. It's laborious, it's costly to have election being repeated time and again. But what do you do in a situation where political actors are acting so badly that they are using all manner of Machiavellian tactics in order to want to gain advantage? What are the principles that cause cancellations? If you look at clause 47 of the INEC regulations and guidelines for 2019 elections, there are 10 different principles that can lead to cancellations. I will mention 3 of them, which are key. 1, overvoting. Even Section 53 of the Electoral Act says where there is overvoting and the margin of lead between the candidate who is the front runner and the first runner-up is such that the number of cancelled votes can affect or tilt victory one way or the other, there will be no declaration of a winner. That is Section 53 of the Electoral Act. Talks straightly about overvoting. But when you look at that clause 47 of the INEC regulations and guidelines, it says where there's overvoting, where there's violence, where there is non-adherence to the use of smart card reader, there will be 0 votes for those areas. So when you breach this, you don't expect INEC to look the other way and say, because we are under pressure from Nigerian society to conclude this election, so let's discontinence. Look at the Kano incident we're talking about. 141,000 people are affected. Now the margin of lead between the candidate who is leading and the first runner-up is 20,000. Will you say the vote of 141, supposed 141,000, should not matter in the determination of winner of this election? And people who challenge INEC and say, look, inconclusive election is not a creation of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu's commission. We had it in 2007 in Ekiti. Recall the Idosi saga when INEC resident electoral commissioners used to be the returning officer, Mrs. Ayoka Adebayo, when she declared the election inconclusive, and there was a repeat election in Oye local government, I think. 2, we had it in 2011 in Imo, where election could not hold in Imbitoli, Ngokpala, Ohaje Egbema, and I think Oguta. And INEC had to go and conclude that election. In fact, that nearly caused a constitutional crisis because the election, that governorship election was held on maybe April 21. All elections were supposed to be concluded by 28, and INEC had to go and do supplementary election on May 5. And I recall Abga went to court to challenge INEC that its candidate, which is the incumbent governor, should have been declared winner, and that they have gone out of the constitutional arrangement. But INEC was able to plead his case that what they went to do, they have concluded general elections, what they went to do was supplementary. We've also had it in 2015. We had it in Abia. We had it in Taraba. We had it in Imo again. At least I recall those. Then in November and December of 2015, we also had inconclusive election in Bayelsa and Kogi. So INEC has conducted 196 off-season elections. How many of such were declared inconclusive? With the election of, say for Osun, of September 22nd, which was declared inconclusive. And you will see that in that particular election too, the margin of lead of the PDP candidate to APC was just about 300 or 500 votes. And that is why I said inconclusiveness is a reason from competitiveness of the elections. If it were to just write the result or to give a figure, you will not have inconclusive election if the margin of lead is so wide. But because of the competitive nature, I know that this six states or 5 states where there will be supplementary elections, some of them is just for formality. And I can tell you some of the states where it is just for formality. Because when you bring, one thing I think INEC needs to do, or maybe in reviewing the electoral statutes, is INEC should henceforth adopt the principle of PVCs collected as a yardstick to declaring election inconclusive, rather than number of registered voters. Because like in Kano, where you said there are 141,000 potential voters, the number of PVCs collected may be just 60,000. And it is only those 60,000, according to INEC regulations, that will vote. And I expect INEC ahead of March 23rd election to publish for public consumption how many of these polling units, what is the number of people in each of these polling units that will be voting. Because we know from history that the number of registered voters, number of PVCs collected are different. They are never same. Look at it. We have 84 million registered voters. Only 72 million people collected their PVCs. No matter what you do on Saturday, you won't have 100% turnout of voters. The margin, the voters' turnout in this election has been oscillating between 40 and 30%. So even for the number of persons, even for people who have collected their PVCs, you are not expecting all of them to turn out, irrespective of whether there is inducement, whether there is a lot of voter education. But the bottom line is that I am of the opinion that INEC is on the side of law to want to give every voter opportunity to exercise their franchise in the determination of who governs them, rather than just rewarding bad behavior where politicians orchestrate violence in a particular stronghold of their opponent, hoping to reap bountifully. Because what I see in that is what they call in boxing technical knockout, is cause confusion, cause violence in the stronghold of your opponent, believing that INEC will cancel the result. Meanwhile, you protect your own territory and make sure that nothing happens there. It's not right.
All right, Joe, you were talking about technical knockout. I know you have a relationship with Mike Tyson.
Of course not.
Okay, Joe there speaking. But just a few points before we bring in Mukhtar Halilu Modibo. Yeah, the subtext of what Joe is saying is to be referenced to the provisions in the law as well as in the Constitution. What the reference always is to the number of registered voters in a particular area. So that's where amendment may be useful.
Yeah,
let's just say law reform going forward, and not to the number of PVCs collected. It's always to the references to the number of registered voters, and which is why, Kirian, you also find in recall of lawmakers the reference to the number of registered voters, which is why at least 2 attempts that have been made, including the last one against Dino Melaye, collapsed, because the reference is number of registered voters. But Joe, thanks a lot for your comments. Let's bring in now Mukhtar Halilu Modibo. Give us your opinion on the forthcoming supplementary elections.
First of all, in the governorship election, we've recorded number of issues of voter apathy. And that occurs because, most of the people travel for election. Most of the people are scared of dying and what have you, because we've recorded a whole lot of number of people dying on elections and what have you. But basically, I would say on the preparedness of INEC are fully prepared, because we've seen our observation during the presidential election being utilized in the governorship election, because INEC were there on time. We've seen cases where people, the INEC ad hoc staffs are sleeping because there were no people to vote. Because if you see the nature of the way elections is being held in Nigeria, we shut down the whole entire country because of election. That's one. So someone lives, let me use an example with Abuja here. Someone lives in Nyanya, but his voting point is in central area. So take a look and see how he will travel from Nyanya to come to central area to vote. So these are one of the things that I feel we need to talk about and then see to it, because most of the people live in the city while they don't live in the city. Vote in the city, they don't live in the city. So one of the serious challenge is voter apathy. And the second one is security. We are being told that each and every polling unit will have 4 unarmed security personnel. In some cases, we've seen places whereby you only see one unarmed security personnel. We've seen places whereby a video that's gone viral in Lagos that one police officer was struggling with thugs to do this kind of thing. So I would say INEC is trying, but they need to stand up and do the real thing. Police should also do more to that, because I have seen a number of cases, we went out to go around and see what is happening for ourselves, because I have been in the situation room collecting data, but I need to see what is happening. We went around and a police officer stopped me and he was asking me, where are you going? With my tag and everything on the car is fully identified. So it's one superior police officer that has to come and tell him, hey, he's on election duty. So, and most of the places whereby we have over 5,000 observers across 33 states. You will see places whereby they are only being given one tag of a vehicle. So how do you expect them to go around? This is a small challenge. I think it's one of the non-sensitive materials that INEC need to work on. Fully identification of election materials, because ballot papers are ballot papers. So how can I know? I didn't go to school. How will I know that this ballot paper is identified? Because you see places whereby you will not see, INEC will not give tag of a ballot paper. So corpers will just write House of Representative or Senate and tag on it. So like me, someone that did not go to school, I will just go and take the ballot paper and go. And I will end up being arrested because the ballot paper is not fully identified. So these are things that INEC need to do. Fully identification of vehicles on election duties, fully identification of election materials, and what have you. I think if they do this, we will have a very credible and good election.
All right, Mukhtar Halilu Modibo, thank you very much indeed. I was actually going to ask him about this data collection issue and how it impacts on election, but that will be much later. But let me return to Chinwe. Now, Chinwe, the issue of, we have sensitive materials, non-sensitive materials. What is the guarantee that in those 6 states, where supplementary election will be held, that the sensitive materials are well kept and protected? Because those who want to cause confusion during elections go after sensitive materials, because that is the particular one required for you to enter the final result. So what is the guarantee, security-wise?
Yeah, just like you mentioned, sensitive materials are mainly result sheets. And because it is sensitive, we handle it with caution. We ensure that sensitive materials are kept in a very safe place. And it's not a material you can see people loitering around to pick up or to loosely kept. So we are sure that our sensitive materials are kept well so that it will not get into wrong hands. And also, I would have loved to make a comment on what Mukhtar said. Yes. About voter apathy. He gave an instance, somebody living in Nyanya and is coming to Abuja, to the central, to vote. You see, you are advised, the law says you register where you reside, because there's going to be restriction of movements on election day. So if you know you live in Nyanya, you are supposed to register in the polling unit around Nyanya, close to your house.
What about those who relocate? From time to time, people relocate from one
yeah,
place
if you relocate before elections, we are giving them opportunity to transfer their data to where they are staying. There are interstate relocation.
The people say it's rigorous to do that. It's not really easy to do that. Many wanted to do that, and they didn't work for them.
Maybe it depends on the time they started. Apparently, they didn't start on time when we gave that opportunity for people to do the transfer. Yes, I might agree with you that there may be some hiccups, some challenges. But for now, that is just what the law says, and we try to encourage people to make sure you register where you reside.
All right. Thank you very much, Assistant Director, Publicity for INEC. And gentlemen, we'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll continue with the conversation. All right, welcome back. And it's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I'm returning to Chinwe Obuka of the Independent National Electoral Commission. One of the advertised reasons for the cancellation of the results of the election or the voting in some of the affected areas was overvoting. With PVC, with smart card reader, and with the elaborate supervision, how does overvoting occur and who is responsible for it?
Thank you very much. Well, who is responsible for overvoting? I'm happy you said we have elaborate preparation. We have people who are supervising the processes. And overvoting, I can assure you, is not caused by INEC. INEC does not cause overvoting. It's in the process of people wanting to manipulate the process that the votes that are counted, the votes that people cast are supposed to be the votes that will be declared. But like Jide Ojo was explaining when he was saying that everybody will want to outreach each other, and they go through different processes to ensure that their own vote is higher than others. Well, people in the field always said, like some people will accuse our officials or accuse politicians of collecting the votes, the electoral materials, collecting the ballot papers, stuffing ballot papers with the boxes. They must have thumbprinted earlier and then find a way of getting those votes inside the box for collation. But with the processes we have put in place, if they actually use our smart card reader for accreditation and for voting, the issue of overvoting will not arise because the number of people accredited using the smart card reader will show, supposed to tally with the number of vote cast.
Now,
but when things are not done,
would it be possible for any political party to maneuver the other in an election, in a polling unit, without the conniving with an election official? Because we are talking about overvoting here. The card reader is there. The number of registered voters, is there. So how come there is overvoting? Wouldn't that have been possible, with the, kind of a connivance between one party and the election official, as the case may be?
Well, I may not say it's a connivance. Maybe I would say it's such things are gotten through either by force or under duress. These our electoral officials, polling officials, are just NYSC people, children that just graduated from school. And you look at these politicians who are supposed to be their grandparents, seeing them, forcing them to do what they ordinarily are not supposed to do. Because they have been trained. They have been trained, given refresher training on what to do at the polling units. But when these people come to intimidate them, some of them might, just to save their lives, might decide to give in. But they are asked to just write their report. Write their report of what happened. Then, at the end of the day, now we look at it.
In other words, and if this presumption is wrong, we can rebut it. INEC loses control at some point during the voting process.
Is that correct?
No, that INEC loses
control. In terms of... because
if you have supervisors, you have security, and then you are... anyway, maybe you're a bit reluctant to answer that question. Jide Ojo, how does overvoting occur, and who is responsible for it?
Well, for me, it can occur, just like Chinwe said, in a situation where you discontinued with the use of smart card reader. And this is also taken care of by clause 47 I talked about. If I had known, I would have, but it's very elaborate. 10 different things that could happen that can lead to cancellation of votes. And yes, as at the time we have Electoral Act 2010 as amended, there was nothing like PVCs. there was nothing like smart card reader. Recall that PVC was a 2015 phenomenon after we did the registration in 2010. Now, that section 53 says, because it's been a practice where there will be overvoting, that means voting above the number of registered voters in that polling unit. But what I have seen, I also observed this election on both occasions. I observed the 2019 election, the first strand of it on February 23rd in FCT here, and the second strand on March 9, I observed in Oyo State. I know, just like Chinwe may not want to admit, INEC drops the ball at some point when there are no sufficient security to protect these vulnerable children that are deployed as INEC ad hoc staff. I saw somewhere in Oyo Town, a polling unit with about 1,500 voters, having only one female unarmed policewoman. Female, unarmed. And I asked her, are you the only one here? She said, yes. She said even on February 23rd, she was the only one here. And come and see the rowdiness of the whole place. It was in the course of our interaction that the policemen on monitoring, I think the CP and his entourage, met us there and was like calming the people down, because there was issues about voting points. People need to be orderly. If your name starts from A to D, this is your voting point. If it starts from J to F, this is your voting point. And people were like, no, we won't allow. And let's take it. One person in front should go this way. One person in front should go this way. And the woman was helpless at that point. So what do you expect in such a scenario? Let's assume we observers are no longer there. The only policewoman there is overwhelmed. And this politician comes and says, look, this is the figure I want you to record for our party. Forget about this smart card reader. The smart card reader will have checkmated this. But you see, where you discontinued with the usage, and that's what led to cancellation of vote in some places. Because what INEC has said in that clause 47 is that where you even have issues with your smart card reader, call for a replacement. And if you don't get a replacement by 2 p.m., postpone the election till the following day. But we saw a situation, particularly on February 23rd, where there was no strict adherence to the use of smart card reader. It was enforced in some parts of the country. It was not enforced strictly in some part of the country. An attempt to enforce its usage on March 9 led to a situation where people were intimidated to either abandon the use or to use it haphazardly, at the end of which you now have the number of voters being more than the number of persons who even collected the PVC. Because we are not even talking of number of registered voters. It's about the number of people who collected PVC. Because when you say the number of registered voters, that can even lead to overvoting. Because where you have about 40% PVC collection and you are printing 80% of the vote, then that means about 40% of those who voted should not have voted. And in my own estimation, that is overvoting. Because the commission has said by its own regulation, if you don't have PVC, you don't have any business voting in that polling unit. But I think one thing I needed to flag is whether these collation officers and returning officers and even ad hoc staff are well trained enough and gallant enough to withstand pressure. Because what we have seen in some instances is returning officers making a wrong call when they could have sought the advice of the INEC legal officer because I'm alluding to what happened in Bauchi, for instance, where you have a scenario that the results were being collated from polling units.
That matter is subjudice.
No, I know it's subjudice, but I'm only saying if the returning officer had been properly guided, peradventure, we will have averted this litigation that has arising from Tafa Balewa local government result.
Jido, thank you very much. The point, just before Mukhtar Modibo speaks on this, earlier you were, for good reason, extolling the virtue of the fact that inconclusive election is partly a manifestation of the competitive nature of the elections that we are now having, rather than in the past where results were merely written. But some persons would argue that overvoting is indeed also a manifestation of the finagling with the electoral process. Ballot papers are, ballot boxes are stuffed, completed and stuffed, or results, election officers are compelled to write results, which of course then come into conflict with the data arising either from registered voters, but more particularly PVCs collected. Mukhtar, your analysis of the data, what did it reflect in terms of overvoting? And was there any linkage as to how this might have occurred?
Okay. First of all, I would like to align myself with what Mr. Jide is saying. But first, I would shape what I'm trying to say. Now, these ad hoc staffs were being trained in 4 days, just 4 days, for them to do this job. That's one. Two, in the places where we said there's supposed to be 4 unarmed security personnel in the polling unit, in the voting point, then 300 meters away from the voting point, armed security personnel. We should not see what he is saying, because if the unarmed police officers or security personnel could not do something, then the armed could come in and do something. We've seen cases that something like this happened in Minjibir local government of Kano, whereby the card reader, I think there are 775 voters in that polling, in that voting point. It's only 23 people that the card reader accredited. You understand? And they went ahead. The ad hoc staff went ahead to do it manually. The observer there and the people there are telling him, no, you shouldn't do this. Call for the replacement. He didn't do anything on that regard. I personally, I think on the day of the presidential election, went to one polling unit in Karo. That's Karo here in Abuja. I met an ad hoc staff that was given, all the result sheet, after filling the result sheet and everything, you give the security personnel, the party agent and what have you, their own share of the result.
Copies.
Copies, thank you. What he did was, he did not write anything because he feel he is tired and what have you. He didn't write anything. He was just stamping, signing, and giving them. So unfortunately, when I got there, I never wanted talking. I now said, hey, what are you doing? He said, no. No, he is tired. He didn't do this. He didn't do. I said, calm down. Okay, this is what you are paid to do. So you must do it. I'm not compelling you to do it, but I know you will do it. So when I talked to him, he went ahead to do it, but some left with the result without anything on it. So this causes all these things. And thirdly, what I'm trying to say on this is, you see an instance whereby INEC ad hoc staffs are being under pressure. Pressure in the sense that they don't have security, or the security are not talking. I'll give you an instance of a place, I think, in Karo 2, where the security personnel that was at that polling unit is, I don't want to mention name, but is a road safety officer, and he was holding beer. I think around 9, they were collecting.
Was it 9 p.m. or?
9 p.m.
It was holding a bottle of beer.
He was holding a beer, you understand? But it's unfortunate for him to do that, but I will tell you, the people there coordinate themselves. They even own generator for the INEC ad hoc staff, for them to collect results. Everything was moving smoothly there. But the only thing is, the security personnel is holding a beer. Tell me, if something could happen there, what will he do? He is holding a beer. You understand? So these are instances, there are some particular people that cause damage to the entire process. The process is moving well. INEC has tried. Police officers, other security officers tried. But there are one things that causes the whole and the entire process to go down. Because for me, I only observe, my organization only observe the process of election, not result. If you ask me today who won, I will tell you I don't know. Because I only observe the process of election. So you see instances whereby the small things that happens, INEC might not know, the police might not know, but the problem is the ones that are at the polling unit and the voting points are the ones causing this kind of small problems. And I think if they are being addressed, it will go smooth.
All right, thank you, Mukhtar Halilu Modibo. And I'm sure you are listening, AIG Mohammed Mustafa, on this issue of proper policing of polling units. Mr. Jide Ojo and, of course, Mukhtar raised a very important issue here with respect on how polling units are policed by the security agent. But, because there's no gainsaying, the fact that violence and the unfortunate conduct of the key players during election actually occasioned the cancellations in most of the local government areas that we are talking about. And, one wonders what you are going to do differently on the 23rd of March concerning the states that are going to engage in supplementary election. Are you making changes, or are you sure that what you have can guarantee peaceful conduct of election in those states?
The whole thing is called for commitment on the part of everybody, all stakeholders. From the analysis of Jide, the Assistant Director, and Mukhtar, you can see that if there's commitment, there is responsibility on the part of each and every player there. We will have a smooth man. Where if even you have one security personnel, the agents are there. If all stakeholders are committed, actually, you will have a hitch-free exercise. At least 1 or 2 person will raise, this is the wrong way. Like Mukhtar said, he even went. Everybody was there, but it was his movement to that place that brought out those very serious lapses. So as for the supplementary elections, I think it's going to be easy. We'll have enough personnel. We have the deployment, both armed and unarmed, which was a challenge, actually, because you have 400,000 policemen to police for 200 million Nigerians, and the polling units, and the voting points. So with even the support of the the other sister agencies, we cannot cover. Definitely, everybody is aware of this. So, but commitment on the part of everybody, every player, each player, will now guarantee this is successful thing. Our voting will fizzle out because of measures taken by INEC, cancellations and all those things. So what are you going to achieve from our voting? Definitely it will not count. So I think it is our development. With time, we're going to have it. I'm sure our voting will be one of the things that will fizzle out. So I think law enforcement in supplementary, we're all up to task. We have enough personnel to police the polling units and for the voting points. We shall have this in very successful election by God's grace. Thank you.
AIG Mustafa, on the 9th of March, there was an unfortunate incident in your zone in which a police officer, I think an ASP, as well as an other rank, lost their lives. That was attributed to the activities of bandits. And now that you're having the rerun in 22 local government areas in Sokoto, is there any concern about the likely infiltration of bandits in and around these areas? And if so, what should be done to reassure the voters who will be coming out on Saturday?
Kingsley, as part of the analysis, ISA, that it was on the eve of the election, this thing happened. They ran into the bandits, and the unfortunate incidents that consumed the life of the ASP and the sergeant. Even the third person was abducted by who succeeded in rescuing him to alive. This place is a flashpoint. It's been taken care of. It's at the border with Zamfara. It's been taken care of, heavily policed. The joint task force is there, the military police and all of us are there to take care of. And we have addressed these situations. It is, in fact, the flashpoint. It's been taken care of. So we're going to have a hitch break exercise.
All right. Thank you very much, AIG Mustafa. Just to listen into the tweets that have come in from our viewers, Kirian, let's go over them quickly. Now, Ibrahim Moduaji says the atmosphere in the affected states is tense. Desperation is high. Peace, however, should be the watchword in the supplementary elections. Kudos to the Emir of Kano for calling for peace in the state, as well as other traditional rulers should do the same in their states.
And from Ibrahim Abubakar Hamid, for those that are snatching the boxes, let's remind them the rules and regulations are still there.
Sani Michael Omakoje, inconclusive elections leading to supplementary elections portend danger for our democracy, especially where the will of the people is subverted. The aftermath of inconclusive elections, as we have seen, has brought woes and should be discouraged.
All right, from Festus Akimboewa, while INEC should be commended for being bold to declare elections inconclusive to demonstrate credibility and transparency, many voters are growing wary of our electoral process and may not be in the mood to come out in good numbers to vote in the supplementary elections.
That's another one from Festus Akimboewa, Kirian. Let's take this. It says, listen very carefully, please. It says, so what happens if turnout in supplementary elections is lower than the number of votes of the leading candidates in the states where elections have been declared inconclusive? Does it mean the supplementary elections will be declared inconclusive again?
Well,
you understand that question? I mean, it's just a matter of
question.
numbers.
Well, we don't have time because
they will just deal with the figures as they are.
Now, Hussein Babame said INEC needs to be independent as it is in their name. The process is experiencing serious setback with court orders here and there.
Dele Jack Solomon, one thing the commission, that's INEC, cannot take for granted in the supplementary elections is the appointment of credible and trustworthy people as collation and returning officers. This advice should be taken seriously in view of the supplementary elections coming up this weekend. Once again, appointment of credible and trustworthy people as collation and returning officers.
We're out of time, Kingsley. We know we have from Comrade Elijah Ngala, Ebwatibi Zekeri.
Comrade Ihan Ye says, talking about security and others.
Then Akeju Olabaju too.
That's
also.
right, that's right. Okay, well, just, we'd like to appreciate you for sending in your tweets. We don't have enough time to deal with this issue, but Chinwe, you may wish to speak to this. The smart card reader in some point was being hailed as a talisman, along with the PVC, to deal with the usual shenanigans that we used to have with our elections. But part of what has arisen from the 2019 elections has been the discretionary application of otherwise strict rules on the use of the smart card reader. Can this be avoided on Saturday?
Yeah, well, it is actually one of the major reasons Commission has already said that if in any polling unit they did not use card readers and PVCs, they have to return 0 votes. Okay. They have to do 0 return.
Okay, we'll leave
that
it there.
means it's going to be, yes, strict compliance.
Not just 0, but don't you have a backup? A backup, assuming they say, okay, the card reader is malfunctioning, don't you have there's no rule of compulsion?
No, there's backup. In all polling unit, there's a smart card reader backup. That's why they said if there's any problem, if there's a technical problem, we also have technical staff that will attend to them immediately.
Well, you see, all these have been planned, no doubt about that.
Yes.
But the implementation is the case. I recall that Mukhtar Halidu said that in one polling unit, that the card reader was only recognized about 20-something people out of over 1,000. So are you going to wait for how many to be brought to that polling unit for them to vote on? And remember, time is also a factor in all of this. But in any case, well, card readers are supposed to be used compulsorily. All right, thank you. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this particular program. I want to appreciate all of you for being here this morning for the program. Chinwe Obuka, Assistant Director of Publicity, Independent National Electoral Commission. Thank you, Chinwe, for being here. Jide Ojo is a regular man on this show. Jide, thank you for your comments. And then, of course, from Sokoto, we had AIG Mohammed Mustafa, Assistant Inspector General of Police, Zone 10, covering Sokoto, Kebbi, and Zamfara. But it's been nice talking to you this morning, AIG Mohammed Mustafa. And of course, our correspondents, of course, we have already...
we have signed off our correspondent, and last but not the least, Mukhtar Halilu Modibo, an election observer and head of the data collection for the 2019 Election Observers Mission. Mukhtar, thanks a lot for being with us on the program.
Thank you.
Okay, Kiran, let's go over now to the foreign desk to take one or two stories.
The European Union has told British Prime Minister Theresa May that it will only agree to a short delay to Brexit if members of parliament approve the current withdrawal agreement next week. The European Union Council President Donald Tusk said an extension requested by the Prime Minister was possible. Prime Minister May has written to Mr. Tusk requesting a Brexit delay to 30th June, saying she needed more time to get her deal agreed by members of parliament and passed into law. Donald Tusk said he believed all 27 other EU members who must sign off on the extension would agree, but it depended on a positive vote in the House of Commons.
All right, and that's our show this morning. We thank you for being part of it. Tomorrow is yet another Good Morning Nigeria day. I hope you're going to join us. My name is Kilian Umar. Have a great day.
I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I joined Kirian and also thanking you for being with us on the program. Remember, you can watch excerpts of today's edition later on at 5 minutes past 5 in the evening on NTA News 24. You can find out on DSTV channel 419. Well, a wonderful day ahead of you.